Welcome back to Cross-Strait Chronicles. We turn complex cross-strait history into stories you can actually enjoy. Grab a seat, relax, and let's travel back in time, across the strait. Today, we're talking about something that doesn't sound very exciting: treaties. Pieces of paper, official stamps, lots of formal language. But these treaties quietly did something more powerful than cannons ever could. They rewrote China's future. Last time, we talked about the Opium War, how trade turned into addiction, how addiction turned into war, and how the Qing Empire discovered, painfully, that the world had changed. China survived the war, but what came next was in many ways even more dangerous. Segment 1. Victory on paper, defeat in reality. In 1842, the Qing dynasty signed the Treaty of Nanjing. On paper, it ended the war. In reality, it began a new era, an era where China was no longer fully in control of its own decisions. The Qing court didn't see it that way at first. Officials told themselves, "We've paid compensation. We've opened a few ports. The foreigners will leave." They did not leave. They multiplied. Segment 2. What does unequal treaty actually mean? Let's clarify something. An unequal treaty isn't just a bad deal. It's a treaty where one side has military power, the other side has no real choice, and the rules overwhelmingly benefit the stronger party. There was no negotiation. There was no compromise. There was acceptance or invasion. That's not diplomacy. That's pressure with paperwork. Segment 3. Extraterritoriality. Laws that don't apply. One of the most damaging clauses was extraterritoriality. This meant foreigners living in China were not subject to Chinese law. If a British merchant committed a crime in Shanghai, Chinese officials couldn't arrest him. They had to ask British authorities nicely. You can imagine how that went. For China, this wasn't just unfair. It was a direct attack on sovereignty. A country that cannot enforce its own laws is not fully a country. Segment 4. Treaty ports, islands, inside the empire. Then there were treaty ports, cities where foreigners could live permanently, trade freely, build churches, banks, and businesses. These ports became small foreign worlds inside Chinese territory. Chinese residents lived next to foreign residents, but under completely different rules. Same city, different realities. And slowly, power shifted. Segment 5. The domino effect. One treaty leads to another. Here's the problem. Once Britain got special privileges, every other power wanted the same. France said, "We want what Britain has." The United States said, "Us too." Russia said, "Actually, we want more land." And China couldn't say no. Each treaty weakened the Qing further. Each concession made the next one easier. This wasn't a single defeat. It was death by 1,000 signatures. Segment 6. The most dangerous clause. Most favored nation. Let's talk about one clause that sounds harmless. Most favored nation status. It meant if China ever gave any foreign power a new privilege, all other powers automatically got it too. So every concession spread instantly, like a virus. China lost control not just of policy, but of future policy. That's why historians say the Qing didn't just lose territory. They lost the ability to choose. Segment 7. The Second Opium War. Treaties by force. Again, if you thought one war was enough, history disagreed. The Second Opium War forced China to sign even harsher treaties. Foreign troops marched into Beijing. The old summer palace was burned. This wasn't about trade anymore. It was about submission. And the treaties reflected that. Segment 8. Missionaries, merchants, and resentment foreign missionaries gained freedom to preach. Foreign merchants gained access to the interior. Some Chinese welcomed new ideas, many didn't. Tensions grew, not just between governments, but between people. This resentment would later explode into rebellions and revolutions. Unequal treaties didn't create resistance. They fueled it. Segment 9. Why reform became so hard. Some Qing officials understood the problem. They wanted reform. Modern armies, modern education, modern administration. But here's the paradox. The more China tried to modernize, the more foreign pressure it faced. Reform required stability. Unequal treaties created chaos. It was like trying to repair a ship while it's still taking on water. Segment 10. Loss of trust. The people versus the dynasty. For ordinary people, the Qing government looked weak. It couldn't stop foreign intrusion. It couldn't protect livelihoods. It couldn't defend dignity. And once people lose trust in a dynasty, history shows what happens next. Segment 11. Unequal treaties and national memory. These treaties didn't just affect the 19th century, they became part of national memory. Stories of humiliation, lessons about weakness, warnings about foreign powers. They shaped how later generations understood sovereignty, pride, and survival. This matters, even today. Segment 12. From Qing collapse to modern politics. The Qing dynasty eventually fell, but the world it left behind was shaped by unequal treaties. They influenced Chinese nationalism, anti-imperialist movements, revolutionary ideology, and yes, the political paths that later divided China and Taiwan. History doesn't draw straight lines, but it draws long ones. Segment 13. Why this story still feels sensitive. Unequal treaties are still discussed carefully in China, not because they're ancient history, but because they touch on sovereignty, foreign pressure, national dignity. These themes never really disappear. They evolve. Segment 14. The quiet power of paper. No epic battles here, no dramatic last stands, just documents, signed under pressure, enforced by force, remembered for generations. Sometimes the most powerful weapons aren't guns, they're agreements. Segment 15. Setting the stage for what comes next. By the late 19th century, the Qing Empire was trapped, too weak to resist, too rigid to reform quickly, too divided to unite. Rebellions were coming, revolutions were brewing, and the old world was running out of time. So here's my question for you. Were unequal treaties the real reason the Qing dynasty collapsed? Or were they just exposing problems that already existed? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video helped make Cross-Strait history a little less confusing, consider giving it a like and subscribing. History is complicated, but learning it doesn't have to be. Next episode, the Taiping Rebellion. Explained, China's deadliest civil war. I'll see you in the next episode.